Welcome to Tea Talks, where young adult stories and church experience blend into a beautiful insight to inspire us. So grab your cup of tea, sit down, relax as we spill the tea. Here with me today, I have my good friend Katrina. Katrina, I am just so happy that you accepted to be part of this video series where we're going over, there is this book that was written a few years ago called Growing Young, where the researchers were looking into what is the reason why we're losing so many of our young adults. And from that, the topics of today come from that book. And the first topic that I'd like to talk to you is about empathy. But let me get to know you a little better first, so everybody else can know you a little better. Why don't you share with us a little bit of your own background and experiences as a young adult?
Yeah. Well, I'm Katrina. I grew up in a Christian household, loving family, 2 older siblings, but we went to public school, which was sort of frowned upon in our church. And so as a teenager, I was really confused what it meant to be a Christian. When I was 18 years old and going off to college, I chose to go to a Christian university with a big prayer that God would just show me what does it mean to be a Christian? What kind of Christian do you want me to be? How can I better represent you? And it was totally foundational and completely changed my life for where I am today. And now at my age, I recently realized my purpose in this life is just to share the love of Jesus.
Oh, I love that. I love that. How do you feel like, how was your journey as you were like going from, like you said, from a public school then to a Christian university? How did it feel, like that transition?
It was challenging just because I didn't go to private school. A lot of the students at my university grew up together. They knew each other, so it was kind of cliquey and I felt kind of out of place. But at the same time, the environment was welcoming. It's like the professors there, they really helped me see the love of Jesus too. But it was a challenge going from the public school environment into the private school or Christian school environment too.
Yeah. So the professors, the whole environment helped you. How does empathy, which by the way is one of the topics in the book that we are going through, first of all, how do you define empathy?
Empathy for me is understanding, but also stating how someone else feels. So being able to relate to people and understand where they're coming from.
And you feel like your professors showed that to you, or somebody there showed that to you, that's why you felt like the experience completely changed your life?
Absolutely. My outlook on Christianity completely changed, and I can look back now on my home church and see that I believe they were doing what they thought they should be doing to win souls for Jesus. Just it was just an unapproachable way. I don't feel like they tried to connect and form relationships, whereas some of the professors and even the students that I met there, some friendships that I made, we formed a community, and in order to do that, you have to empathize with one another.
Yeah. So pretty much the characteristics, it's interesting because usually it's the completely opposite, right? The church is a place where we should feel the empathy, but it was the completely opposite. You felt like the church didn't show you the empathy, but the Christian school did, which that is actually a very good thing. It's amazing that Christian institutions today can still do that, because a lot of them have deviated from their original purpose, What are some of the misconceptions or stereotypes that the older generation might have about the younger generation?
I think a big one is lack of responsibility or wanting to do more for ministry. I think we as young adults might be more unreliable, or they might think we're unreliable. But really, I think that's a personality thing, to be honest.
So basically, the stereotype is that idea that young people don't want to take any responsibilities, don't want to have any commitment. How do you deal with that? Because I'm a mom, I'm a pastor, and sometimes I struggle with that. But tell me, from your perspective, why that is a stereotype? Why is that a misconception?
I think they just think of us as kids, to be honest. Or we get a chance and we mess up, maybe, and we don't get grace.
The lack of grace.
The lack of grace. And then also, maybe they don't help us see, they just kind of throw us into the wild waiting for us to mess up. And then when we do, it's kind of like, oh, we knew this was going to happen.
It's kind of like that idea, which, by the way, I had about God too, because of my background, how I was raised. I had this idea that God was the God that was just waiting for me to mess up to punish me, And unfortunately, sometimes that is in the background of a lot of us humans, older and younger, that we're kind of like, like they make a mistake. And have you personally experienced a lack of empathy from older generation?
I have. One of the things that stands out to me the most is after I graduated college and came back to my home church, I brought a boy. And he didn't grow up in a church. And instead of welcoming him, it was sort of like a lot of the older generation put this guard up, and they were like, oh, well, what are your intentions? Like they treated him like a father should, I guess, but my dad didn't treat him that way. And it felt hurtful for me, because here I am bringing someone to church that you have an opportunity to empathize with and to get to know and to potentially show the love of Jesus to, and instead you couldn't even remember his name. And I'm telling you, it's the most basic male name in the world. Like you could guess and get his name right. But it really hurt me, but it also hurt him because he's a super social extrovert person, and just knowing his name means so much to him. And people couldn't do that. Not everybody, but majority of people just weren't welcoming. And it was like, oh, well, you didn't grow up in church, so you're not welcome.
Did you feel judged because you made the choice of non-Christian or none of your denomination? And did you feel like they were judging you for that?
I do. I don't know if that comes from like my own personal feeling way, but I do feel a little bit that way. But I also knew that our relationship, I still believe that God put him in my life, and I wasn't going to not be with him just because he wasn't in our denomination.
Yeah, I know that it's a big struggle, and I completely understand, because like as a mother, I can see both sides. The young person like you coming into the church and bring somebody that would be considered unequally yoked, but also understanding how you felt judged, but also as a mother, as the church, we were like, oh, what if this person takes her away from God? What if this, because the Bible says we shouldn't be unequally yoked. But then with time, I started learning that unequally yoked, it's not just not having somebody that is not from our own denomination, but it's actually have that person that is humble and their heart is converted to God. Because if the person has a true heart to God, within time they understand more of the Bible, they will accept. Because there's sometimes we have people in the church that does not have a converted heart. So I do understand both sides, and I can understand exactly what you were going through, because dealing with a lot of young people, that is a challenge, when you like somebody that is not from your own church. How did you cope with that?
I was bitter for a long time.
Yeah.
And it actually took getting married and leaving that particular church.
Did you marry that boy?
I did.
Ooh.
I did. I married that boy, and we've been married for almost 6 years. So I was very clear in the beginning with him that church was important to me. But at the same time, things had gone, neither one of us, we would feel sick when going to church. I'd feel like I wanted to throw up going into church.
Wow.
And that's not healthy. And it was part of my bitterness. But with time and finding a new church that did accept him, and there was a young adult group that really, we formed a bond, and it helped him grow too. We're all in different spiritual journeys with God. And I think with prayer and patience, God will do the rest. Yeah. And it took leaving that church and finding a new one, and time for me to, again, like I said before, people, I can look at them now and think they were doing what they thought they should be doing to grow the church or to win souls for the Lord. And I can't be mad at that, you know?
Yeah. It takes maturity to get to that point to understand that, and that was your journey. That's where you needed to go. I understand both sides, you know, the concern of this young person coming in with somebody that is not of the faith. But at the same time, I have seen plenty of examples of people that have married somebody that was not in the faith, that because of the love of the people, they became of the faith. Also, I had cases that was not the case. But from the beginning, it was not even the fact that the person was a Christian or not a Christian. It was just that their attitude was like, maybe I should have seen the red signs, red flags earlier, you know. Can you share now the other side of the coin? An example, situations where demonstrated that people had empathy towards you.
Yes, also within that church. Like I said, there were several people in the older generation who were really closed off at the relationship or me bringing someone in that wasn't of the faith. But my youth leaders that watched me grow up and that had a really strong relationship with me, they threw us a wedding shower within the church, and that was kind of a no-no at that time. But they actually took the time to get to know him, and they showered us. When she asked me or said, I want to throw you a wedding shower, I was like, really? But that was a way for her and her husband to show empathy toward us and to get to know my husband better. And it really helped, that grace helped, that empathizing helped restore some bitterness that I had in my heart.
It's one of those things. I do know that some denominations, including ours, probably they feel like I cannot support this unequally yoked marriage. But what is the opposite? Both of them are going to be away from the church if we don't embrace them. And the chances of them surviving the relationship and actually wanting to have any relationship with God, it becomes even less. So it is difficult. It is a fine line. But I met your husband. I didn't know he was he was the boy that you were talking about. And I saw a loving husband. I saw a beautiful marriage. And he was there with the group of the church. So I loved that happened, you know. When this person showed this empathy towards you, how did that impact you?
She inspired me to do the same. Whenever, you know, how many times do we encounter people that don't believe the same way we do? And it's easy for our human nature just to write them off and be like, oh, well, I don't want to be around them because they don't believe the same way I do. But how do we grow the kingdom if we do that? Mm-hmm. How do we truly share the love of Jesus if we close them off because they don't believe the same way, they don't feel the same way? It takes empathy to form connection, relationship with people, to give grace, and that's Jesus.
Yes, absolutely. What do you have to say to a young person who probably is going through the same things that you went through? Probably grew up in a church that didn't show them empathy, didn't show them love. They're still in that journey. They have not found the grace that you have found yet. What do you have to say to them?
First off, pray a lot.
Pray.
Focus on growing your relationship with the Lord. And in time, your heart will be healed. And also, don't let anyone stand in your way of fulfilling out the ministry God has called you to do.
Amen. Absolutely. I'm with you. Katrina, this was wonderful to hear a little bit more about you. I learned something new. Yeah. I hope we can do this again. And thank you for joining us, coming here to record this video series.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. And for you at home, thank you so much for enjoying Tea Talks. Keep stirring up the conversations and embracing the beautiful and the messiness of life. And until next time.